Our first calculator video is meant to talk to you a little bit about the order of operations in the calculator. Obviously you've spent some time studying order of operations. They're very important to make sure that we all interpret mathematical symbols and expressions in the same way so that we get the same answer. Your calculator is very good at understanding order of operations and will stick to them regardless, no matter what, I should say. So you need to make sure that when you enter things into the calculator, you know what you're entering, you enter it appropriately so that you get back the correct answer. I have a few examples here on the right hand side that I'd like to go through, which are going to emphasize just a couple of areas with order of operations. We'll probably talk about this topic in a number of different videos as we go through the course. As you'll see, the first part of example 1 takes a look at raising 3 to the 4th power. That's the same thing as saying 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. Or 81. On the calculator, we're going to type in 3, and then on the right hand side near the top of the calculator you're going to see what looks kind of like the roof of a house, a caret key. That's what we use to raise numbers to powers, so we'll press that. That's to the, if you want to think of it that way, and then we'll press the power 4. So what we have is 3 to the 4th power on the calculator screen right now, and we'll press enter. And the calculator will tell us that the answer is 81. In the second example, we're going to take a look at what happens if we take negative 3 to the 4th. Now, in this case, the 4 is applying to the 3 only. The negative is going to take the opposite of whatever the answer is. So as you can see in the next step in the example, we have the negative of 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, or we end up with negative 81. When you type this into the calculator, one of the things you do need to make sure that you understand is the calculator has both a negative key at the bottom of the calculator in white, and it has a minus key in gray on the right hand side of the calculator. In this case, we want the negative key, so we'll press negative 3 to the 4th. And the calculator, once we press enter, will come back and tell us our answer is negative 81. Now what happens if we wanted to actually take negative 3, the number itself, to the 4th power? That is negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 to get positive 81. Well, in this case we need to use parentheses. And you'll see there are a set of parentheses just above the number area on the calculator. So if you press the left parenthesis, negative 3, right parenthesis, and then press that power key, 4th power, and enter. The calculator will come back and tell us positive 81. So you need to be very careful when working with negative values especially, and even exponents. That's where we run into the most trouble. But when you have negative numbers and exponents, please be careful and use parentheses appropriately. Our second example, here on the right, is going to take a look at what happens with fractions and exponents. In the first case, we want to actually take the fraction 3/4 and raise it to the 2nd power, that is square it. So we're going to use parentheses, open a left parenthesis first, and we're going to say 3. And we can always think of fractions as being division, so we're going to say 3 divided by 4. We're going to use the right parenthesis. And then we can either use the caret key on the right hand side and say to the, and then 2 for the 2nd power, or over here on the left hand side of the calculator you'll see there's an x squared key. Because we do square so often, there is a shortcut key in this situation, and I'm going to use that. If we press enter, we'll see that we get 0.5625, and in the example on the right you may have noticed that the answer was 9/16. To convert that decimal to a fraction, we're going to go into the math menu. That's toward the top on the left hand side, and you'll see the first option, number 1, has this arrow, and that means convert to a fraction. So we're going to choose option number 1. You can press 1 or enter at this point, and that'll tell us to take the answer, which is the immediately preceding answer of 0.5625, and it's telling the calculator to convert that to a fraction. If we press enter, we see that we do get 9/16. Now let's take a look at the next part of example 2, where we have 3 squared to the 4th. In this case there are no parentheses. We can just simply enter 3, and we want to square that, and we want to divide by 4. Notice that this is squaring only the top number and not the bottom number. In the first example, 3/4, we squared the 3 and the 4 essentially to get 9/16. Now we're squaring only the 3. We get 2.25. Again, to convert that to a fraction, we'll press Math. We will choose option 1, and we will press Enter. And that gives us the answer of 9/4. The last part of example 2, we're going to take 3, and we're going to divide that by 4 squared. This is kind of the opposite of the second part of example 2. Instead of squaring the numerator, we're going to square only the denominator. And again, different from the first part in which we squared both the numerator and denominator. We press Enter here, we'll get 0.1875. Converting that to a fraction, pressing Math, 1, Enter, we see that we get 3/16. And those values all agree exactly with the values that I showed here in example 2. Our last example, example 3, is dealing a little bit more with fractions and showing that we have to be very careful in the calculator with dealing with fractions. If I want to take 5 plus 3 and divide it by 2, what I might do is type in exactly that. Take 5, add 3 to it. So we're going to do 5 plus 3. And then we're going to divide by 2. The problem here is that order of operations tells us to do the division before the addition. So what your calculator is going to do is take 3 and divide it by 2 first, and then add the 5. And we end up getting 6.5, which is the same thing as 13/2. To actually take 5 plus 3 and take the result of that and divide by 2, we again need to use parentheses. So we'll use an left parenthesis. We'll do 5 plus 3, right parenthesis, divided by 2. Now the parentheses, under order of operations, tell the calculator to add the 5 and the 3 first and divide by 2 second. That gives us the result of 4. Now there's some other issues here too. What happens if we want to have an addition or a subtraction in the denominator? What we might try to do is take 5 and divide it by the sum of 3 and 2. And if we don't use parentheses, we'll take 5 divided by 3 plus 2. And again, what the calculator will do under order of operations is do the division first and then add 2. 5 divided by 3 is 1.66666667. And we add 2 to that, we get 3. Lots of 6's and a 7 there. In this case, it's really 6 repeating, and the calculator is just rounding to that very last digit that you see there. If we want to take 5 and actually divide it by the sum, we again need parentheses. So we'll take 5, divide it by, left parenthesis, then we'll put the sum 3 plus 2, and finally we'll close on the right-hand side with the right parenthesis. Now if we press Enter, the calculator is going to do the addition first, the division last, and we'll end up with 5 divided by 5, or 1. So the point of this video is to be very careful when using the calculator. Use parentheses when appropriate. If you're not sure, go ahead and use them. You can't hurt by adding some extra parentheses unless they're in the wrong place, of course. But be very careful with order of operations. Make sure that the calculator is doing what you want it to do and what you intend it to do.